Professor Breen Brown's research shows that vulnerability fosters good emotional and mental health. It is a sign of courage. We become more resilient and brave when we embrace who we truly are and what we are feeling. The Vulnerable Scientist podcast is a space for scientists to tell their honest and authentic stories. I am your host, Sarah Nyakeri, who happens to be a scientist, informal science communicator, and I help scientists create personal websites. If you want to support this show, go to www.patreon.com/thevulnerablescientist. You can also follow this podcast on all social media platforms at TV Scientist Pod.
Spain, and people here love motorcycles, and they usually tweak the engines so they become,
have a turbo.
Yes, so this is very common here. You might hear them passing by.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's another one.
Yeah, I can hear. Anyway.
Sorry, you have to accept that if you live here.
It's okay. So how did you go to once you finished your master's, did you know you wanted to go to your PhD, or what is that thing? What happened between your master's and your PhD?
Yeah, so while I was working for Bob as a technician, I knew I wanted more because, after 2 years, I felt I wasn't getting any more challenging. I wasn't growing, and I didn't want to just get a normal job. I was thinking, what else? What, go into pharma? Like, that didn't really appeal to me. And I like doing research. And again, I love traveling. Like, I love exploring other cultures and other countries.
Yeah.
So I decided to go for the PhD, similar to Bob, to explore another country. But of course, I wanted it to be a good institute. I didn't just want to go to any random country. So I applied for famous institutes who had good reputations. So I applied to King's College in London, in Vienna, in Germany, to the Max Planck. So I ended up going to the Max Planck Institute in Dresden. And I picked it because of the vibe. Like when I went there for the interview, what was beautiful about their institute, they really focus on community. It wasn't just about, we do great science. We do great science, but we also build great community and work culture.
Yeah.
So it really felt like being part of a family from day one. Everybody was very inclusive, very open and warm and helpful. And I was like, wow, this is exactly the kind of people, I want to surround myself with. Yeah. So that's how I ended up in Dresden in Germany for my PhD.
What were you doing?
I have to say.
You have to say?
It was at the same time the best time of my life, but also the hardest time of my life. It was a mixture of both. Yeah.
What were you doing before, while were you applying for these different institutions?
I was doing my master's in that
you're still
laboratory. I was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was literally still working as a technician / master student. And I started applying to all these PhD programs because that's when they started popping up. Before that, PhD programs weren't that common. So this is in 2003. And then I was like, a PhD program, that sounds nice, because then you kind of start with a group of people from all over the world.
What is okay? Tell me about meeting people from different cultures. How is that?
This is why I love science, and this is why I love working with scientists. I mean, I love it until today as a coach and trainer, because when you work with people from different countries, it's almost like you travel to their country. You get to experience their language, their food, their sense of humor, their clothing, everything. You really get to experience their country through their lens, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that has been so enriching on its own. Just that part of being in the scientific world.
Okay, so what was the good... You said there was community. Does that community still persist up to the end of your PhD?
That community still exists until today. This is why I say community is so important. When I started my business, almost 4 years ago now, that same community has been so supportive. And I finished my PhD in 2007. But these same people, when they saw that I started my business as a coach for scientists, they're like, hey, Amani, come to my institute. We could need you. Hey, Amani. And they started recommending me to give workshops and give talks. And that's why I say community is so beautiful, because even if you leave that community, I haven't been in touch with many of these people from my PhD, like for a decade. We have lost contact. But there is this sense of we're family. We went through this together. We went through that hard time together.
Yeah.
We survived it.
Yeah.
So when they see you again, whether it's on social media or they see you in person, like they want to help, they want to support. And that's why I say to invest in building community, because it does not only pay off for your career, but it gives you a sense of belonging.
How are you feeling when you first got the notification that you've been accepted to the PhD program that you wanted?
Oh my God, I wish I had a video of that back then. I can still remember. I can still remember the scene, because I mean, I did not think I was going to get accepted, because the Max Planck Institute, especially the one in Dresden, it was very like elite and like the best institute, and only the best scientists come in, and and it was so competitive. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot, because I didn't have like the highest grades, you know. And I got the email, and I was literally jumping up and down and screaming in front of my computer, and the whole lab was like, what is happening? I'm like, I got accepted. Yeah, I was so happy. And I have to say, it was definitely a life changer. You know, going to Germany, going to the Max Planck was a life changer. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity.
I know Sweden and Germany are two different countries, but I'm just in the same space. Yeah, in the same continent.
Close to each other, yeah.
Yeah, so
but still very different, yeah.
Yeah, so how was it like moving to Germany? You wanted to drink?
Yeah, the funny... drink?
Yeah. Please drink water.
Yeah. Does it make sounds when I drink? And
it doesn't matter.
I thought you were saying that if I started drinking when I moved to Germany. That's what I thought you asked me. Because I did, actually. Before, I didn't drink alcohol.
Oh, okay.
So if you ask me what is the cultural thing I learned in Germany, was to drink a lot of beer. Before that, I didn't drink alcohol at all.
Okay.
But yeah, it was still a culture shock, because you would think, okay, Germany and Sweden and this Northern Europe, they're quite similar. But there are quite some differences. So for me... that was a difference, in culture and learning the language. I realized, like, if you don't speak the language of the country you live in, you have like this barrier that stops you from really integrating into that country. So German is really hard to learn, even for me, speaking Swedish fluently. Yeah. And
what else?
I ended up staying there. So although there were some things that didn't align with me and my values and my lifestyle, I still liked it enough to stay. I stayed for 11 years in Germany after. Yeah.
Even after your PhD?
Yeah. So I even left and I went back. So I finished my PhD and then I graduated into unemployment, like 60 to 80% of PhD graduates do until today. A lot of people graduate into unemployment and total confusion. And that was my situation too. So I graduated, but I still had this like very naive belief that, but I have a PhD. I'm sure the jobs are going to line up for me. That was unfortunately not the case, right? So like, I had a PhD, but nobody was really interested in hiring me because I didn't even know what I wanted. You know, like, how can you apply for jobs when you don't even know what you want and what you're good at? So I ended up doing this. I went to Southeast Asia straight after my PhD, and I backpacked for 3 months. And I thought, you know what? I'm sure if I travel and I just just be for 3 months, the answers will just like come to me, right? So I went on this trip totally forgot about everything, science, the world, everything. I was just fully there. It was an amazing journey. But it also taught me that there is more to life than studying and careers and work. You know, like it was really the first time where I got to see real poverty, like firsthand, where I got to see children with how do you call it? Like burn scars on their faces because they don't have electricity to cook food. So they would cook food on fire. And it was so common in that area that children would fall into the fire and get burned and injured. And I was just like, oh my God, like I realized how protected I was living in that modern Western world, having access to everything, access to education, healthcare, everything, how privileged I was. And there I was like feeling sorry for myself, like I don't know what to do after my PhD. And there are kids here with no electricity, no running water, no access to education. So it was a real wake up doing that journey. For me, I'm very grateful for that. But I still ended up coming back from these 3 beautiful months clueless. I still didn't know what I wanted to do with my career. So thanks to networking, if somebody's wondering how do I land my next job, networking. Thanks to networking and talking to the people I know, I found my first job after my PhD as a project manager for a European collaborative project on type 2 diabetes. So on paper, it sounds amazing, Sarah. It's like, ooh, project manager for such an interesting topic, diabetes. And I thought the same when I got the job. I'm like, this is going to be so cool and it's so exciting. But it ended up being a very boring job. Again, I had an amazing boss. He was super nice and supportive. But the job itself was paperwork, was sitting 8 hours in an office all alone, not talking to anybody, just doing emails and reports and paperwork. And me being such a social butterfly, this was like the worst job ever. You know? Yeah.
I'm curious to know what kind of research you've done at this point, because you've mentioned diabetes. So maybe someone is curious. Okay, so what were you doing in your research? Which kind of research do you do in your master's or your PhD? And I would like you to tell us more about that.
Oh yeah, let's see if my scientific research brain is still there somewhere.
We want it as simple as possible.
Yeah,
so
I'm going to keep it simple. I'm not going to go into the details because I can't, even if I wanted to. It's such a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I ended up doing, for my bachelor and master thesis, I did structural biology. So basically protein crystallography, trying to figure out the structures of proteins. And I just ended up in that field. It wasn't like something I was actively looking for. But then for my PhD, I did want a field that was a bit more interesting for me. And I've always been very curious about development. Like how does an egg, a little fertilized egg, develop into this multi-dimensional being? You know, it's like a miracle.
Yeah.
So that's why I then chose the field developmental biology for my PhD. And it was basic research. So we were using the fruit fly wing as a model system to look at pattern formation and to look at the cells at these compartments and ask, well, what is it that makes these cells form these patterns? Like, how do they know that they should stay here and not cross over to this side, although they were identical cells? So it was really going to this basics of cell communication, cell signaling, and it, like, as a topic and as a question, very interesting biological questions. But you realize then after a while, you know, in the 3-4 years, you don't really get to answer too many of these bigger questions because it takes more like a decade to actually be able to answer the big questions, right?
At what point did you realize that just what you've said?
No, I realized it probably like towards the end of my PhD because I was like, damn, I still haven't really answered that big question. I mean, the only thing we were able to see like is that there was an increase of certain proteins at the cell junctions. And then we were hypothesizing, like, okay, so it must be these proteins that that are creating like a rubber band between these cells, and maybe this rubber band is keeping the two cell groups from intermingling, right? But again, we just went from one hypothesis like to another, and then you still have to do more experiments to address that one, right?
Yeah. And how did you feel when you realized the thing that was making you so excited at the first of your PhD has not been answered, and your time?
Freaking frustrated. And then you go, and I remember from my PhD defense when I presented my data, and my mom came, and my sister and my family traveled all the way from Sweden to listen to my defense. And my mom, you know, bless her, she was like, so is that what you spent 4 years on?
Oh my God.
You know, like your parents expect that you're gonna like cure the world or cancer or something, and I'm like, so that's what you spent 4 years on? I'm like, yeah, mom, like working on flies, understanding how cells behave. But it wasn't just about how my mom reacted. I felt like that too. You know, I also felt like I want to see an impact. I want to see that the work that I do as a scientist in my lifetime, you know, not in 30, 40 years, will have contributed to the betterment of other people's lives. And I think this can be the frustrating aspect of doing basic research. Although it's very valuable, it has its place, it has its value, but where's the application? Where is the impact? Where's the immediate, you know, contribution that I think gives many of us satisfaction?
Yeah. Oh my God, we just said that out loud. That's very true. I think it's a frustration that most people who are in basic research have when they you know, they go to the point where they're like asking themselves, okay, so why am I doing this again? And you're looking for that, you know, impact story, and you can't see it as direct as you have wanted. So that is very common. I share that currently. Totally. So to give people some fuel and some hope, because this is what I love to do today as a coach and trainer. And I used to say this too to my students when I was a science teacher. I actually, in between my journeys, I worked as a science teacher, as a math teacher. And some of the students would come into the math class and they would be like, why do we need to learn this? Will we ever use this stuff in real life anyway? And I'd be like, probably not. Probably you will never use this knowledge in your real life. But you know what I started doing when they would enter the classroom for the math lesson? I would put on the song from Rocky Balboa. You know this one? Do, 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 do. When he's gonna like, Eye of the Tiger. Rising up. Yeah? It's like, all right, guys, welcome to the gym because we're going to be working out your brains today. You ready? So you create the purpose. You make them see that doing math is not about doing math. It's about training your minds. And if you see science like that, especially if you do basic research, if you see that, oh my God, I don't see the impact today that I'm doing as a basic researcher, you know, you might not see the immediate impact, but you are in training. You are in training as a scientist. So you want to see, how am I going to use that? Like, after I've been through this training, what is the impact I want to do in society? So if we start asking that early on during our training, we're going to be able to create that later on. But this is the problem I see. People don't look up from the lab. They don't look up from the research. They have this like tunnel vision, and they just focus 100% on the research. They don't ask, what's the impact and contribution I want to make using my scientific training? Yeah. Beyond my research field. So people, are you listening to this? Please, this is probably the biggest message I'm trying to share as a trainer. Because this is how you can make an impact as scientists. It's not about your research field. It's not about if you figure out the pattern formation in 3-4 years like I did. Who cares about that? But I developed skills and abilities beyond that field. And I think we're going to talk about that in detail maybe. I don't know. But because there's been this topic around, okay, so when you're done with the PhD, so do you have to go to use a PhD like directly, or these other ways that you can use the skills that you gained when you're doing your PhD in another way? But before that, let's go back to your story. So you have done, what did you do in your master's? What kind of research did you do in your master's? The structural biology part.
It was also structural biology. Oh my God, don't ask me about the proteins. I can't remember. It was just protein crystallography, crystallization, growing gene expression in bacterial cultures, and then purifying the proteins and crystallizing them and so forth.
Okay. Yeah. It's fine. So once you're done with, what is that thing that you remember about your PhD journey? Because you said there's a time, I don't know, is it 2 years or 1 year, that when you were so excited and you put your heart in there and you're doing everything, like you're spending even your free time to do the same research. So what is that thing that kept you moving forward even when things were not going well?
People and having community around. Because this is why I think that we have such a strong connection with the people I studied with. Because it was a program, you start together, you don't always finish together because it really varies when the project ends, but you would start together, so you felt like a class, you felt like we are together in this journey. And I probably made the best friendship in my life. I still have like the closest friends in my life are from my PhD time. And I think because you go through a lot of pain, you go through a lot of pressure and stress, and those friendships helped me survive it. So we would do a lot of fun things. We would really like, we were students, so we didn't have like tons of money, but in the weekends and our social time was very active. We did so many activities. So having that very enriched social life helped me survive the stress and the pressure and this feeling of I don't really fit in here. I'm not sure if this is what I want. Yeah. But at the same time, what's beautiful about doing research, even though like I knew this is not what I want, like what I value about it is freedom. And freedom is definitely a beautiful thing. And I hear this from a lot of people, like they love academia because I love the freedom and I don't want to lose my freedom. And if I go into a company, I will lose my freedom. But that freedom comes at a cost. Right. So yeah, during the PhD or the postdoc, you might have a lot of freedom to do whatever you want, and nobody's coming and checking on you every day to see how is it going or whether we're at a result. But sooner or later, you have to show some, produce. The only difference is when you work in an industry or in a company, you don't have that kind of freedom, daily. Right. So there's like things have to work much faster. Yeah. But the upside of that is that you actually get to create more impact much faster. Because that means the work you're doing, if it's not leading to results, they're not going to let you waste 2-3 years just experimenting and having fun for the sake of doing research. It's like, no, like we want to create something that will actually solve a problem. So if you say, I want impact, well, there you go. If you want impact, then probably working in a company doing R&D could be actually more impactful.
Hi, I'm glad that you're still here. The conversation still continues as Amani still explains her journey into becoming a career coach for scientists and PhD graduates. And at this point, she'll still explaining her before and after and during her PhD, and I decided to split it because it was a bit of a longer episode, and I hope you get to hear the second part of part 2 in the third episode tomorrow. Also on that note, you can also go to successbeyondthelab.com and get free stuff that you can use to up your career. You can also go to her social medias, the LinkedIn page, and reach out to her if you need help with anything. And if you can also sign up for the free coaching session that is on 15th September this year, that 2022, and hope you enjoy that.